when all the pressure is setting in and you can feel it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do a podcast. What do I do here?
Yeah, all of the people are watching me. Yeah.
All of them. They're just, everybody's so nuts. So before we get into that, I ask everybody, what'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Man, I don't remember.
I
think I have eggs. I think I have eggs. I think eggs, yeah.
Okay, all right. It must be a long time ago then, huh? Or wasn't that special
like
breakfast, maybe?
8 hours ago, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I think we're sounding good. Why don't we actually jump into why we're actually talking today? So why don't you tell my listeners what you're currently raising money for over on Kickstarter?
Absolutely, yeah. So basically, our company works on several products, and all of them are digital guitars. Basically, digital guitar is a guitar which can play like an instrument. If being more specific, the good analogy would be the synthesizer. You probably know that there are keyboards and like regular piano, and then like several decades ago, synthesizers for the keyboards appeared. That's something that allowed musicians to produce music on a different scale within like any sounds at all, by not limiting themselves with the analog sound of the piano. And it's kind of crazy that didn't happen for guitar world for all of the time, especially considering that the guitar is the most popular instrument in the world. And and it didn't happen. There are several reasons for that, but basically we're trying to overcome them and create a new category of digital guitars, digital synthesizers, for the musicians and hobby guitarists who are more comfortable with the guitar than with the piano, for them to produce music using the familiar interface, which is a guitar.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're speaking to a fellow musician, guitar player. I own recording studios.
Oh, nice.
I still do live sound. So I was excited for this conversation because as a guitar player, I'm always like, I can kind of mess around on other instruments, but, to no actual ability, but like, hey, I'm getting
and you don't have to learn the keyboard, right? Because you're forced to learn it, and it's like a different instrument which will take like years to master, and you already play the guitar. Yeah.
So let's walk through. So like, where is the start of this idea? I mean, you say that your company makes products like this, but is this something that you personally were struggling with, or just something that you saw a need in the industry? Like, where was kind of the starting point of this idea?
Well, we don't have like the typical startup story of like a founder sitting in front of the window with the rain outside and thinking about the idea that he had. We had like a different story. Basically, the background of the company was that one of the folks who is now our community leader was having an idea of a portable guitar which you can carry around with you everywhere. That gained some interest within the country, and we got the investor to support that. And we started to produce like the first version of Jammy, which is on the market already. So for the last year and a half, I think. And it was positioned more like a travel guitar, just like alternative to a regular guitar, which you can take with you.
Right.
And that did prove to be a great idea and a great market. But then we understood that the niche market of the digital guitar synthesizers is much more interesting for the company which do hardware, because the mass market is good, like when you're talking about travel guitar. But in times like this, like the economic crisis and all of the things happening around the world, people just don't want to invest their money in toys, right?
Right.
But the musicians who actually need that instrument and it solves their real pain, they would be able to spend money on something that they actually need for their production workflow for their job, basically.
Right.
And that's a bit more better position to be in as a company, and we kind of pivoted into that direction. And that's where we launched this new product, which is called Jammy EVO, which you can see now on Kickstarter. That's the brief story.
Very cool. And does this work then using an app or MIDI, or how does it go from being a guitar to a keyboard? What's happening behind this in the back end of this?
Yeah, that's right. We're using MIDI, which is like a universal protocol for exchanging music messages, and then using so-called digital audio workstations, which are widely available on any type of laptops, computers, to then synthesize the sound. So basically, we have proprietary sensors, which is the core of the technology that we have, which can track the position of your fingers on the of the fretboard, like how strong you pluck with your right hand, all of the techniques that you're using, and then we translate all of that into MIDI signal, which we then output through USB or Bluetooth. And then the audio workstation on your PC would make it sound as an instrument. Yeah.
So that seems like there's a healthy like tech hurdle in terms of, I'm just thinking about my right hand when I play, plucking and finger picking. How, for that to translate easily into MIDI and to a keyboard or pick an instrument, I guess. It seems like that's a lot of tech inside of there and a lot of little nuances. Is that where a lot of the work really was?
Yeah, that's right. We actually, and many people do underestimate the technical complexity of extracting the information from the string movement and your finger positions. And that's basically the main reason, I think, why the technology of digital guitar and digital synthesizer wasn't adopted before, because there were attempts like starting from the 80s to make something like that. But because of the technical challenges, I think it wasn't convenient enough, and it wasn't replicating the guitar experience enough for the guitarists to adopt it. So that's basically where we invested most of the time as a technical team. The sensors which we've come up with, they are optical, and they are basically trying to do their best for the setup that we have and extract as much information as possible from what you're doing with the strings, and then to translate it into the most realistic experience possible right now. And also the latency. We need to minimize the latency, which is also one of the biggest challenges. For that, we do a bunch of crazy stuff. Like we're optimizing the time frame which we're using to analyze the signal, because, like, for instance, if you have a latency between plucking the string and hearing the sound more than like 10, 20 milliseconds, it's already like a no-go for a guitarist. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the challenge was to make latency less than 10 milliseconds, which we achieved. So bunch of technical challenges there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as somebody who's been in digital audio since kind of the beginning of it, the computer speeds have to be in your favor right now. The amount of processing in just an iPad, as opposed to me, like, I used to remember thinking about running my old G3 and old DigiDesign 001. I'm like, my God, the latency is killing me. Like, I can't, and it's almost like, it was almost next to him, really wasn't very good workflow, but it's just we didn't have the computing power, at that point. So I'm assuming that a lot of that stuff with that tech allows an idea like this to really sort of take form and take shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, the category of the market itself is also broadening, because so many audio workstations like Ableton, GarageBand, Logic Pro, there are so many on the market. Some of them are free. They are growing pretty fast, and it's widely adopted by not only like semi-pro or pro musicians. Now there are a bunch of hobby music producers which basically produce music on the hobby level, and they also need like the controller to work with.
Now, did you have to, you mentioned all these different softwares and platforms, and I mean, there's a gazillion of them. Did you have to make something that works seamlessly with everything, or is that a pretty centralized system now of like, listen, if you use, was it Core Audio or something like that, it'll just work, or is it something along those lines?
Well, the basic setup, like just plucking the string and pressing the frets and just producing the sound, is pretty straightforward. So that's universal across all of the digital audio workstations, because that's how MIDI works, thanks to the creators of MIDI, which were quite wise, I think. But then when it comes to specifics, like controlling the different parameters of the sound, the filters, that's pretty diverse for the different platforms. So we're trying to make all of the controls, because we don't have just the strings. We also have like special buttons, knobs, which you can use in your creative process. And we try to make those buttons and knobs mappable. So the player can basically select anything he wants this button to make within his setup. And we kind of optimize the initial setup and the default presets for the most popular audio workstation, but it's totally configurable.
That's cool. That's awesome. So how long was this process from idea to I have something, what I can see in the video here on Kickstarter? Like, how long is that process for you guys?
Well, for the second product, it was much more faster. I think from the initial design to the first prototypes, it just came in a couple of months.
Okay.
which is pretty fast for the hardware. For the first one, it took us more than a year to set up the manufacturing and figure out the technology and the sensor and stuff like that. So we invested a lot of time in that in the beginning.
So, in those periods of time, what's something that's like keeping you up at night? What's the thing that you're like really worrying about?
I think like the most challenging is always the making the right product, which in our case is making the guitar which is realistic enough for people to use it actually, and not just play around. And like the playability aspect of it is super important. And well, there were several times, of course, as with any company where we were struggling with something. It was challenging and we were upset or depressed even. But each time where I saw like a video or live, somebody playing live on Jammy and producing great music, that's something that basically inspires me like for the years to come. And really helps to motivate the team, ourselves, to work further.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So where in this, this whole time frame does the idea of using Kickstarter kind of come in your mind? Like from the beginning, or is it something where you're like, let's use Kickstarter to prove market validation, or what was your mindset behind it?
Basically, yeah, we didn't think of any other approaches actually. We knew that to launch a product which has to be relatively mass marketed, we need to use a platform. It's really hard to launch product ourselves because we won't create enough reach for them to pre-orders to cover our costs for the tooling and for the production, and then be able to be at least profitable or break even.
Right.
So the Kickstarter was the initial idea, and we didn't even hesitate, I think.
What and inside of that, when you're kind of putting that together, are there certain things that you're looking for to kind of know that you're ready to maybe even start building out the page? Are you waiting for like a final prototype, or testimonials? Do you have a couple in maybe a couple models in the world? Like, what are you kind of waiting to have before you start thinking about launching?
I guess from the operational perspective, I need to be confident that the production timeline that we are promising is reliable, or at least predictable, and there are not too much risks on that. So basically that usually involves like creating the first round of prototypes and understanding like approximate unit cost, and also having some initial at least conversations with the manufacturers. It usually helps if you do it even further. So once you already like doing manufacturing, and then you launch the Kickstarter, but that's sometimes not a viable option for a young company with not too much capital. And from the marketing perspective, of course, you have to have like the prototype, which you can showcase and demonstrate to people, and like the video of the main page is also super important. So those are the elements which we usually think of.
That's cool. And how about in terms of maybe like data points are you looking for? Are there anything that I want to have X amount of email addresses, or I want to have 4 or 5 testimonials, or was there anything that you're looking for of like, okay, now that we have prototypes, people are using them, they're out there, but like still, you don't just, okay, now we launch. But was there something you were looking for of like, we want to at least have X amount of something?
Well, I think we used like a backwards thinking. We had an initial date of launch which we wanted to have based on our like cash flow expectations and stuff like that. But before that date, we needed to have a special, like a considerably big amount of emails and people interested in the product before we launch. So that was just our target, and then we worked towards it through the last 3 months.
That's cool.
In terms of the numbers, I think you have to launch at least if you want to raise more than 100,000 at least. It's better to have at least 5,000 emails of people who are interested in the product, unless you are expecting for a miracle.
Yeah, and we hear that quite a bit from people who are like, I don't know, I just launched it. I thought Kickstarter would just bring me a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, I think that worked like that like 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it did in the beginning. I think I had like, I don't know, 20 or 30th Kickstarter ever. And yeah, I would just put a couple tweets out on Twitter and I'd raise 10 grand. I'm like, oh, that was easy.
That's a miracle. Yeah.
Long time ago. Long time ago.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Now that we're talking about Kickstarter a lot, let's actually talk about it here. I mean, we haven't even mentioned some of your numbers. So when I'm talking to you right now, you've got about 7 days to go in the campaign, and you've raised over $185,000. I'm in US dollars right now. So, but 558 backers. That's a lot of orders. Is this something that you kind of had some anticipation that the campaign was going to be as successful as it is? And is it, and what's the kind of the temperature like in your camp right now of like, wow, this is a really, people really want this, and we got to keep going with it.
Yeah. Considering this, I would say that I don't think that there would be a worse time to launch Kickstarter campaign than now.
Yeah.
Like with all the situation around the world and in US with an unfortunate events, that's super challenging times. But we didn't have like an option to postpone the campaign. So considering the situation, we're pretty happy with what we've got, and happy that people trusted us and supported the campaign. So yeah, we are pretty happy with the results so far.
Were there any conversations of like, hey, let's just wait out a couple weeks, maybe not delaying it a whole bunch, but like, what were the conversations around when you're watching COVID-19 happening, world shutting down, riots here in the United States? I mean, what were kind of some of the internal conversations of like, do you guys just believe in the product and go with it?
Yeah, that was the case. We didn't think that postponing the campaign would create any difference, at least for a couple of months, because the pandemic situation won't go away for the next, 10 months or even more until the vaccine is created. So yeah, waiting for more wouldn't be an option for us. So we didn't hesitate as well.
That's cool. Has there been anything behind the scenes of this campaign that you guys just did not plan for? Like, holy cow, we're shipping to Philippines, or I don't know, something that's just like wasn't expecting that.
I don't know. Well, it's our second campaign, so there are not too much surprises right now. I think the interesting fact that this one is pretty great. We used a referral program for this campaign, and as well as for the previous one. Referral program usually doesn't work well for the high price product like ours. If it's like a $50 gadget, it's probably easier to convince your friend to buy it and then earn the referral fee. For the higher price products, it's not usually works. And last time we launched it for the first campaign a couple of years ago, we didn't have a single referral for the program at all. So we created all of the visuals and the description and came up with how it's going to work, and nobody helped us out. And this time we actually have a lot of people supporting us. Like they are posting on Facebook, they are asking their friends to support because they believe in the idea. Basically this program started to work for us, and it was quite surprising. I didn't expect it to work as well.
That's great. What's been the biggest difference maybe from campaign 1 to campaign 2?
I think we were much more conscious about not the launch of the campaign itself, because like the launch is something that you plan for, you create the email list for, and usually everyone does it pretty well. But then during the next 30-40 days of the campaign, last time at least for us, we didn't do much. We tried to do some ads on Facebook, tried different approaches, but basically we just waited it and that's it. This time we did a lot of more preparation and also created a lot of content to make people engaged during the campaign and excited about the product. We made stretch goals, made a lot of educational video. So that's something that we learned from the last time that we should do.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. What, I guess in your guys' mind, who is the person using this product? I know it can feel like it's anybody who's a musician, from hobbyist to professional, but is it something that you guys really see like this is for people going on live on stage, in the studio, just trying to expand their creativity, songwriting maybe, like they just want to quickly lay down songs? What do you guys kind of picture in your mind as like sort of the perfect user?
Well, the core audience, I think, are hobby and semi-pro music producers who are usually producing from their studio at home. And they have like a guitar background. So most of the musicians have some kind of background in terms of the instrument that they learned music on. And those who learn guitar, which are more than half, and produce music right now, those are the customers that we are looking for.
That's cool. And what do you guys see like the next, like, after the money drops for this Kickstarter and you've got to ship out, maybe 650 some odd orders or whatever, but what starts happening to get those units into backers' hands?
Well, we have to set up the manufacturing that involves creating molds, investing in like all the infrastructure, and then basically running the whole manufacturing process, which can take several months, like for the several iterations. And then basically we will be using the same manufacturer that we used for the previous version of the guitar, which produces the previous version right now. So it's going to be relatively easier than the previous time because there are similarities.
Right.
And then we will just use the same supply chain that we use right now to ship out the orders, and then starting up to like already selling worldwide and creating like the reach for the product and making sure that people know that those things like Guitar MIDI controllers out there.
That's cool. And where do you see sort of like the next 2 years looking like? Is it something that you're trying to get into like the big box retail here in the States? We have like Guitar Centers of the world, or is it in Sweetwaters or these kind of big, mammoth stores that a guy like me goes and I order it? Is that what you guys see, or is it more just selling it off your own website? What do you guys kind of envision for the next couple of years looking like?
Like retail wise, it's pretty complicated to predict right now.
Yeah.
I've heard different stories about the Guitar Center, for instance, or other big box retailers who are suffering from all of the pandemic and coronavirus. But we will definitely would consider going with the online retailers like Sweetwater, and definitely would continue to sell directly to consumer because it's a great model to have, and many startups don't appreciate it enough, I think, because you control the margin. It's like this channel that you own, and you control it from the beginning to the end of like the customer support part.
Right.
So it's a better way to serve the customers, and it's actually a more profitable way. So we also continue to invest in direct to consumer.
That's cool. That's cool. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions here that are off topic, but considering everybody's locked inside, I've been doing kind of like a little lightning round at the end here. So if you're game for it, I'm going to shoot you some questions. You ready?
All right, go ahead.
All right, first one. What have you been watching? What have you been watching on TV or Netflix, Hulu, any of that sort of stuff? Any shows catch your eye?
Yesterday I watched Rick and Morty, I think.
Okay,
like the last episode. I love that series. And I also watch a lot of documentary series on Netflix, which are pretty cool, like Explained. They called Explained. Yeah.
Very cool. How about has there been a movie, like a movie that you watched that you really enjoyed?
Oh man, I don't remember when I watched movie last time. I think I don't watch movies anymore.
It's funny. I've been asking these questions a lot, and it's how many people are like, "No, I watched these like 8-part series on Netflix," which is like 12 movies. It's just like, no, I spent like 20 hours watching this thing, but I'm not watching a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more effective with my life. Yeah,
I know, but it's funny how, and I think the same thing. I'm like, man, if anybody asked me, I'd be like, I don't know, but I did watch Waco, and I watched this thing, and that was a 10-parter. I watched 5 series in a row. So yeah. All right. How about a book? You reading any books right now?
Yep. I'm actually reading the book. Like the Bill Gates, he like does this like book list stuff each year, I think, and he recommended like a bunch of books. And one of the books was I'm not sure I remember the name correctly because I'm reading in Russian. It's like about the memory, and it has Einstein name within the title. I don't remember the exact wording there, but basically explains how the memory works, and it's really well written by the journalist who explored the topic broadly, and it's fascinating to read and also pretty interesting to know the stuff. Yeah,
the memory is an interesting thing, right?
Yeah,
it's funny how and how everybody's a little bit different too in terms of like, some people are like they don't remember anything, and you're like, and I will remember this entire conversation for like the next 6 months, and then I'll be like, I talked to them. Yeah, it's weird. My memory is weird on how it like just processes stuff. So it's everybody's a little bit different. So it's cool. How about is there any podcasts you listen to? Outside of mine. I mean, I know you listen to mine all the time.
Of course,
you listen to mine
all
the way through every episode, 195 of them. But past that.
Yeah, I like to listen to Joe Rogan podcast, as probably everyone. Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and yeah, that's I guess the last episode that I listened to. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how about last one will be like, is there any like website you go to for either inspiration in terms of, product design or marketing, or like, hey, I go here and just kind of, learn something or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I'll drop a useful link now, probably. There is a website called Bigger Cake. They didn't pay me for the promotion, but I use it all the time. It's basically a website which accumulates all of the data from the Kickstarter campaigns, and you can see pretty deeply what the campaigners were doing day by day, and it really helps to understand like the principles, and then you can apply them for your campaign as well. So it's pretty useful instrument.
Yeah, you don't have to preach to me. I pay for the Bigger Cake whole creative suites. I'm using all their stuff. It's very cool stuff, man. Yeah, and I love having that Chrome extension where I go to a Kickstarter and instantly I'm like, oh, and that's why you're not having success. Oh, and that's why you're having success. You can
it basically brings the clarity instance.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Well, where can people dive in? Outside of Kickstarter, or obviously I'll send people to Kickstarter, but where can people kind of dive in into your world, see what you guys are making, can follow along? Like, where should I send people?
You can send them to our website, which is playjammy.com. And it has all of the links to the social media that we are pushing. Like we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter pages. All of them are pretty active. So subscribe to follow the company news and also follow the development of the new product.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're busy. Campaign's getting ready to end. We've only got 7 days to go. So if you guys are listening to this, you've only probably got 3 or 4 days to go. So if you're interested, make sure you go over to Kickstarter right now and check it out. Oleg, I appreciate it so much, man. Great campaign. I look forward to see what you guys are doing in the future. And if I can convince my wife, you might get a backer because, I need more instruments around my house. But, yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Have a good day.